Well, I shaved, so the whole Redbeard reviews is a lie now. It should be called No Beard Reviews. Or Lie Beard Reviews. Nah, it doesn't make sense. Anyway, today I was going to review Cruella. Oh, right. Forgot my glasses reflect everything, so buy glasses. I don't need to see. So, I reviewed Cruella. It starts out when she's a little kid, and her name's Estella. And she's kind of a bad child at school. So her mom eventually pulls her out of school and moves to London. She goes to like this rich woman's house to ask for money. Cruella like sneaks in. She attracts these huge Dalmatians that chase her. But while they like chase her outside to where her mom is, then the Dalmatians like run and tackle her mom and push her off the side of a cliff, and she dies. Because it can't be a Disney movie if your parents don't die right in front of you. She like escapes. She runs out and becomes an orphan in the streets basically. But she runs into Jasper and Horace, who were her henchmen in the cartoon. In this mythos, or whatever you'd call it. But they're like friends from the get-go. They're not just her goons, you know. They're like best friends forever. Oh, but her mother gave her this like family heirloom, which she then like dropped in the garden. And she gets a job being a fashion designer for this really rich lady. Actually, there's a few twists and turns in this movie, and I think I won't tell you too much of the plot, so I don't spoil too much. But I will say that like this movie started out one way, and I really thought they were going towards like pushing her towards like where she is at the beginning of 101 Dalmatians. And I think picking Disney villains to make live action movies out of is kind of a weird idea. I mean, it's better than just taking Disney movies from the 90s and making live action movies out of them. We just watched those movies. I mean, people are still watching those movies. I mean, like making The Jungle Book, that kind of made sense because that movie's from the 50s or 60s, I forget. And just so old, it's like, you know, you're breathing new light, you're breathing a new life into it. But with all these movies from the 90s, just like, stop it. I guess Cruella, that's another one that's from the 60s, I think. So then again, 101 Dalmatians was a live action movie in the 90s, so stop it. Oh, but my point was that, like, making movies about, like, direct villains, people who are just, like, pure evil, like Cruella de Vil was in 101 Dalmatians, you know, just seems strange to me. Because there's, like, nothing you can do with them, with their storyline. You have to, like, basically, well, what they did here was craft an entirely new storyline. It's why I thought Joker was a bad idea from the get-go. I mean, they proved me wrong on that one, but it still just seemed like too strange of an idea to work. And now they're making a sequel to Joker, which I still think is a bad idea, but hopefully they'll prove me wrong again. Because where can they go from there? That will keep it interesting. And this is also getting a sequel, now I'm thinking about it, but this what actually makes sense. Because I thought that they were doing this like an origin story, you know, and like at one point they really like delve into like her being like totally evil. Because at one point she starts treating Jasper and Horace terribly and like goes the full black and white hairstyle and like all these evil outfits. Oh, this is up for Best Costume Design for the Oscars this year, and it totally deserves to win just because of how many clever costumes they made for Cruella throughout the whole movie. There was one long flowing dress that that was made entirely out of garbage, and it was great. It was an amazing dress. Ooh, got my kitty now. He's got a similar color scheme to Cruella de Vil, black and white. But this movie really impressed me. It was kind of like a mix between, let's see, 101 Dalmatians, Ocean's 11, Scarface a little bit. More than a little Scarface, actually. Project Runway somehow, and Kill Bill. All mixed together in a bucket, and it somehow works. They make it work. Because it's held together with really strong characters and a really good plot. Oh, and the cinematography is just amazing the entire time. I was really impressed with that. I'm really surprised they didn't get a Best Cinematography nomination just by how well it was done. It was even better than Belfast, I would say. I just watched Belfast before this one, and I just really noticed the cinematography in that one, but this one was better. This whole movie comes together well, you know, even though it's, like I said, those, like, 5 totally opposing things all mixed together. I mean, like, it's Kill Bill because it's obviously a revenge story, or it becomes a revenge story anyway. And revenge stories are always, maybe not Kill Bill so much, but most revenge stories, the moral is that, you know, it would have been better if you didn't seek revenge, basically, because all you do is ruin your life. You know, seeking revenge tends to ruin your life. obsession ruins your life. Or Miller's Crossing. That's another revenge story that things actually turn out well for the person by the end. I don't know if I'd call it quite a revenge story. Or it's Scarface, because it really felt like I thought they were doing kind of like Cruella rises to power and then everyone starts to hate her and she becomes evil. But they didn't do that. They kind of switched it around in a really good way, I thought, to make it so that she actually is the hero. It's not an anti-hero story. Cruella is the hero by the end of this movie. It's a heist film because it's actually like 3 heist films, I felt. The first one, Oliver Twist as well. I would say it's a bit Oliver Twist because the orphan stuff at the beginning, because she's like learning with Jasper and Horace how to pickpocket and steal and stuff, and that's like the little petty crime heist. Then they try like some bigger heist later on, one of which goes horribly wrong, and that's followed by the huge heist at the end, and like that's different actually from most heist films I've seen, because they're almost always like The Sting or Ocean's 11. They're almost always about the one giant heist that like you think it's gone horribly wrong, and then it turns out that was all part of the plan to begin with, type of thing. But this one had like a bunch of smaller heists to kind of keep it interesting and keep the fast pace of the film moving. I mean, Project Runway is obvious because, she's like making dresses, she's working for a designer and everything. And there was like tons of dresses, tons of walkway scenes, but they kept that interesting too, which I was surprised about, because coming into this film, I thought I was going to be really bored just listening to, like, on a surface level, it doesn't sound like something that would interest me. But after watching it, it's like, wow, this like kept me entertained for the entire runtime. And that's so rare, especially for me. I'm just so easily bored. But it really felt like by the end of this movie, it felt like if the next, because they're making a sequel, and if it just leads into 101 Dalmatians, because this one felt like they did everything they could to basically set up 101 Dalmatians, except that Cruella doesn't seem like a crazy person, because like in the movie she was obviously insane, maybe less so in the Glenn Close movie. That one's less fresh in my memory, even though it came out more recently. But she's basically just an insane person who wants to turn a bunch of puppies into a coat, because at one point she does kind of lose it, she like discovers something about herself that makes her go a little crazy, and you think that like, oh, she's definitely Cruella de Vil now. And for a moment it really seemed that way, that's what the movie was doing. That's why I kept thinking about Scarface during these sections, just because it felt kind of like that rise and fall, because for the first half of Scarface, you like Scarface, you're rooting for Scarface. But for the second half of Scarface, he becomes like this evil, horrible person, and at that point you're just like, okay, let's just see how this plays out. You don't really like him anymore after that. And like that's how it felt like maybe they were doing with this, but she has like this epiphany and comes back from it basically by the end. And I think that was a really good move, but it also doesn't set up the 101 Dalmatians anymore. And I'm hoping that with the sequel, they kind of just do their own thing and say like, this is like an alternate universe from the main Disney canon or whatever. She really felt like the hero by the end, and I was definitely rooting for her. I mean, I was kind of rooting for her the whole time, but like that was also strange because like Cruella de Vil is just an evil psychopath in the films, and I don't really like her at all. But this made me like her a lot, like in an immediate way. It made me like the character. So I was very impressed and surprised by this film. I did not expect like anything from it. I thought, like I said, the whole thing seemed like a bad idea to me. Just like Joker, and just like Joker, I was proven totally wrong. Like, oh no, you can make a good movie out of these characters and do something that's fun and interesting and not just retelling the 101 Dalmatians story from a different perspective. No, it was a totally new story, just with these familiar characters, but makes them all likable and fun. And it's really funny too. That's the other thing. Like, I wouldn't call this movie a comedy. It just has like a lot of funny jokes here and there, but not enough. They're like paced out enough that like by the time they tell another joke, you kind of forgot they told the last one, Like it's much more of like a heisty revenge film. Yeah, heisty revenge film. Never thought I'd see either of those in the Disney lineup. Then again, they own the MCU now, so who knows? They can do anything. The acting was really good too. I don't know if I mentioned that. Emma Thompson was amazing, actually. Was that her name? I'll look her up. Oh, whoops. I meant Emma Stone. Emma Stone plays Cruella. Emma Thompson plays the villain, or the heiress who hires her later on in the movie as a fashion designer. But Emma Stone is great. Emma Thompson's pretty good too, but Emma Stone like just steals the whole show. And it's Cruella's movie, so she better, right? Yeah, this movie really blew me out of the water. Blew me out of the water? Is that the right word? This movie really impressed me. And I was very surprised by how good it was. Just in that, like, everything came together gloriously. It was really something else. I really don't see movies like this very often. Ones that can be so entertaining and fun while also telling such a great story, you know? I guess Disney's been better about that. They do own the MCU, again. I think that's more Kevin Feige than them. Anyway, I'm going to give this a 10 out of 10 because it was just so impressive and like really said a lot more than you think it might about like the human condition. But it's like a journey of self-discovery where Cruella is really figuring out who she is, why she wants to kill puppies. Like again, like she doesn't. By the end of the movie, she doesn't seem like the type of person who would do that. At one point in this movie, she does seem like the type of person who would do that. They kind of question like maybe she did do that at one point, but then turns out she didn't. But I was very impressed by this film, and it creates like a style all its own. I didn't even mention that. Like the whole set design, everything about it, like it creates its own style. Oh, it also takes place in the 70s for the most part. I mean, like from like the 50s to the 70s, which I thought was just odd because that's nowhere in the 101 Dalmatians mythos or whatever. Again, mythos, I don't know. Just in that, I mean, the first movie took place in the early 60s. And I think this starts maybe in the early 60s or late 50s. And then the movie in the 90s took place in the 90s. And this takes place in the 70s. But I guess if this is supposed to lead into the 90s movie, maybe that makes sense. But again, it doesn't feel like the same Cruella. I'm just rambling now, so whatever. 10 out of 10. This movie was great. Like and subscribe. Tune in tomorrow and suggest whatever you want. Maybe I'll review it.